Hello and welcome to sunny Portugal, where we are with the new Jaguar F Type. Well, we say new, it's more of a very heavy facelift. But this sharp new front end isn't the only thing that Jaguar has seen fit to change on its two-door sports coupe. Work has been done to increase the material appeal of the cabin, the chassis has been tweaked, and the engine lineup has been completely revised, more on which later. Now, since its introduction in 2013, the F Type has made a name for itself as a sort of hairy-chested 911 rival, a car that blends sports car handling and dynamism with a more laid-back GT car demeanour. The question is, does this new one do the same thing as effectively? Well, that's what we're about to find out. So here we are in the cabin of the new F Type, and truth be told, it's very much the same as it was before. Jag has retained its 1+1 layout, so there's this chunky sort of grab handle thing dividing you off from your passenger. Architecturally, it's all much the same as it was. Material quality is very good, the seats are very supportive, driving position's spot on. Now, what has changed? The new 12.3-inch digital dash. That's new, and while it's, very clear and easy to read, it's perhaps a little bit basic. It doesn't quite look as sharp as, some of the ones you find in its German rivals. Also new is this 10-inch touchscreen infotainment system. It's now all fully contained within the screen, meaning there's no buttons around the outside like on the old car. And while it's easy enough to use, there are a few hiccups. We had a bit of trouble getting a phone to speak to the Bluetooth system, while the display itself isn't that graphically rich. That said, with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, you'll probably find you just end up using that instead. Now, as for that revised engine lineup, so the big news here, I guess, is that Jag has decided to drop the V6 offering from the F-Type range. So the 300 horsepower four-cylinder still represents the entry-level point to the range. So the V6 is replaced by the new 444 brake horsepower V8. Now, that engine can be had with either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive configuration. And speaking to one of the engineers at dinner last night, he was pretty sure that the sweet spot of the F-Type range will be that mid-level V8 with a rear-driven architecture. We're in the range-topping R model, which shares its 5-litre supercharged V8 with the 444 brake horsepower car. Here, however, a new supercharger pulley and software tweaks see power jump to 567 brake horsepower. Torque, meanwhile, stands at a mighty 516 pound-foot, the same as you get in an AMG C63S. With all four wheels sending power to the tarmac, 0 to 60 takes just 3.5 seconds, and it will go on to hit a limited top speed of 186 miles per hour. Now, in fitting an engine with such character and firepower as this 5-litre V8, I guess there's a concern almost that it might dominate the driving experience, and it does to an extent, but not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, the soundtrack is obviously to die for, the performance is to die for. It pulls like a freight train, very smooth up through the rev range right to the top end. So the 8-speed automatic gearbox has been redeveloped with lessons learned from the Project 8, and in this application, it works incredibly well. The gearings aren't too long, so you're sort of hitting about 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour, or thereabouts in the top of second, which means you feel like you can really use and exploit the engine. Left to its own devices, it works pretty smoothly and precisely. It'll change pretty quickly, allows you to stay on the power, even when left in D, but I wouldn't go as far as saying it's as slick or precise as that's fitted to the new 992. Gearbox seems to have been set up to take quite a strong level of abuse as well. You can sort of flick it over into manual, be coming into a corner at sort of like third gear quite fast, and you shouldn't think you'd be able to switch down in a second, but it lets you do it. Apparently this is quite an important part of the gearbox development. In addition to its adaptive dampers, the R model also gets new springs and anti-roll bars, while increased toe and camber stiffness at the rear helps ensure the Jag stay planted as you tip it into corners. And you can feel the results, to be honest. It feels incredibly settled, but it not so much to the point that it feels like all the character's been engineered out of it. It moves around a little bit as you throw it on, but it feels like there's quite a big safety net there to keep you in check. Compared with a 911, it perhaps doesn't feel quite as immediate in its response or quite as tidy through sort of faster sections of corners, but there's a likable sense of character about the way you can throw it into a corner. There's a bit of roll and you can sort of feel its mass moving around you, but it's a character that's to me anyway, a lot more appealing than that of the 911, where the Porsche can feel quite sort of clinical and incredibly precise. It's almost like playing a game of Operation. This, on the other hand, it's more brash and sort of out there. It feels a bit more like whack-a-mole. And while I don't think the Jag would see which way the 911 went on a mountain road, to be honest, I think you'd probably have more fun driving the Jag. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the Jag's engine. I mean, as you might be able to hear, it sounds pretty amazing. But a lot of that is also to do with the steering, which has been completely recalibrated from the ground up. While it doesn't necessarily have the precision and sort of finesse that you get from the 911, the sort of the natural weight and the natural feel to it is really, really hard not to get on board with. Jaguar say they've quickened its off-center response ever so slightly just to give it that much more aggression as you turn in. And the manner in which its weight builds up as you apply lock, it just feels absolutely fantastic. Then there are the brakes, which offer a good amount of feel and progression as you sort of build up pressure as you're coming into corners. They're very easy to read, and the rate at which you slow the car feels very sort of natural. Jag's also made some carbon ceramics available as an optional extra, although we don't have them here. But to be honest, I don't know if you'd need them really. I mean, unless you're planning on tracking this thing regularly, the standard brakes are more than amply snug. Now, price-wise, the F Type in our specification, which is what we've got here, sort of sits at around the 97, 98 grand mark, which means it is, you know, a fair bit more expensive than a 992 Carrera S. While the Jag may not have the sort of razor-sharp finesse that you get from the 992, it appeals in its own sort of unique way. It feels like a bit more of a laid-back sports cruiser than an out-and-out sports car like the 911 is. Its ride is sort of that much more comfortable, its cabin is that much more isolated. The way in which it breathes with the road as you sort of flow along means you really could use it as a long-distance tourer. So it is a very different sports car to the 992. Not only do you get that fantastic engine and the more laid-back, cruisy GT demeanor when you want it, of course. I mean, you can also throw it through some bends and it's a huge amount of fun. But its character is distinctly different to the 992. And to be honest, that's a car I've never really felt like I've gotten along with. I mean, I absolutely respect what it can do, and I think it's a phenomenal sports car, but the Porsche sort of just lacks, for me, a sort of, and forgive the cliche, for me it lacks an X factor really. You sort of drive it for a bit and it doesn't get under your skin sort of quite as immediately as you might like it to. The F Type, on the other hand, absolutely does. And while I don't think it's quite as pretty as it was before with its new front end, the sort of immense character you get from that engine and the way it handles and the way it rides, it all just sort of comes together as a package that for me feels far more likable, far more immediately distinct. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely respect the Porsche and I do like it a lot, but I think if I had sort of close to 100 grand to spend on a two-door sports car, I think my money would go on the Jag. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you never miss another auto car video.